A Map of Thought, Episode 29, Amartya Sin. Here is a claim that sounds almost impossible until you check the historical record yourself. No famine has ever occurred in a functioning democracy with a free press. Not one. Amartya Sen spent his career proving that claim, and in doing so, he changed forever how the world understands hunger itself.
That is a bold opening claim. Where did it actually come from for him personally?
From a memory he never fully escaped. In 1943, when Sen was a young child in Bengal, a catastrophic famine killed an estimated 3 million people. And here is the detail that shaped his entire life's work. Sen later showed, through painstaking historical research, that the region had enough food that year. The total food supply had not collapsed the way everyone assumed at the time. What collapsed was the ability of poor people, specifically landless laborers, to actually get access to the food that existed, because wartime inflation and speculation had driven prices far beyond what they could afford, while food kept moving toward wealthier buyers and military purchasing. People starved to death in a region that was not actually short of food.
That is a genuinely unsettling redefinition of what a famine even is.
Sit with that for one more second, because it deserves to be genuinely unsettling. A famine, in Sen's account, can unfold in a country with warehouses full of grain, while the people dying are simply priced out of reaching it. That single insight quietly overturned decades of famine relief policy, built on the assumption that the core problem was always growing or shipping in more food. It became the foundation of his most influential idea, that famine is fundamentally a political failure, not simply an agricultural one. Sen introduced the concept of entitlements, meaning the actual, legally and economically enforceable command a person has over food, through wages, through property, through social assistance, rather than the raw quantity of food sitting somewhere in the country. A famine, in his framework, happens when large numbers of people lose their entitlement to food, even while food itself may still be physically available. That reframing mattered enormously, because it shifted the entire policy conversation from simply growing more food to protecting the specific economic and political mechanisms that let ordinary people actually access the food that already exists.
And this connects directly to your opening claim about democracies.
It connects directly, and the evidence is genuinely striking once you lay it out. Sen studied famines across history and found an extremely consistent pattern. Authoritarian governments, insulated from public criticism and free elections, have repeatedly allowed catastrophic famines to unfold, sometimes for years, without changing course, because the leaders responsible faced no real political consequence for the deaths happening under their policies. The Great Leap Forward famine in China between 1959 and 1961 killed an estimated tens of millions of people, while the government suppressed accurate reporting of the crisis and continued policies that were actively making it worse. For years, specifically because no free press or competitive election existed to force a course correction. Compare that to a functioning democracy with a free press. The moment food shortages start seriously threatening people's lives, journalists report on it, opposition politicians attack the government over it, and voters have the ability to remove leaders who fail to respond. That pressure does not guarantee a government will solve every economic problem well. But Sen's historical argument is that it reliably prevents the specific worst-case outcome, mass starvation continuing unaddressed for years, because democratic accountability creates strong political incentive to respond quickly, and a free press creates the visibility that makes ignoring the crisis politically impossible.
Let us widen this out from famine, specifically to his bigger idea about development.
This is where Sen made his largest contribution to economics as a whole, an idea called the capabilities approach, and it directly challenged how economists had measured national progress for decades. The standard, simple measure of a country's success had long been something like gross domestic product, total economic output per person. Sen argued this measure was badly incomplete, because a country could show impressive average income growth, while a huge portion of its population remained illiterate, malnourished, or denied basic political freedoms, and the simple income number would never reveal that hidden reality. His alternative asks a different, more human question entirely. Not simply how much income does a person have, but what is that person actually capable of doing and being with their life? Can they get an education? Can they access healthcare when they are sick? Can they participate in political decisions that affect them? Can they live to old age? Development in Sen's framework is fundamentally about expanding those real, lived freedoms and capabilities, with income mattering mainly as one tool among several for achieving them, not as the entire goal in itself.
Give us the everyday version of this distinction, because capabilities can sound abstract next to a simple income number.
Think about the old saying, give a person a fish and you feed them for a day, teach a person to fish and you feed them for a lifetime. Sen's contribution is the sharp, uncomfortable third step almost nobody adds. What happens if the lake has been fenced off by a private landowner, or poisoned by an upstream factory, or if the person teaching them to fish belongs to a group legally barred from owning a boat? Teaching someone a skill means nothing if the surrounding system denies them any real opportunity to use it. Real development, in Sen's sense, means making sure the lake itself stays genuinely open, not just handing out fishing lessons and calling the job finished.
Can you make the gap between income and capability more concrete before we get to the actual index?
Here is a comparison Sen himself returned to often. Picture two countries with an identical average income per person. In one, that income is spread broadly, backed by accessible public health care and widely available schooling, so most citizens can actually convert their income into a genuinely long, healthy, educated life. In the other, that same average income masks enormous concentration at the top, with large portions of the population lacking basic healthcare access or literacy, so the identical income number hides a radically different lived reality underneath it. A pure income measure would rank these two countries identically. Sen's whole point is that they are not remotely equivalent as places to actually live a full human life, and any serious measure of development has to be able to see that difference.
Did this framework actually change how real institutions measure progress, or did it stay mostly academic?
It changed real institutional practice in a very concrete way. Working with the economist Mahbub ul Haq, Sen's capabilities thinking directly shaped the creation of the Human Development Index, which the United Nations has published every year since 1990, ranking countries not just by income, but by a combined measure including life expectancy and education levels as well. That index is now one of the standard tools used across international development policy, and it exists, in a very direct sense, because Sen insisted that income alone was measuring the wrong thing entirely.
Where does this land in the world right now, given ongoing food crises we still read about constantly?
Directly and urgently. Wherever a modern famine or severe food crisis unfolds, whether driven by conflict, climate shocks, or economic collapse, Sen's framework is exactly the lens serious analysts reach for. The immediate question is never simply whether enough food theoretically exists somewhere in the world, or even somewhere in the country. It is whether the people actually at risk have a functioning entitlement to reach it, whether roads and markets are being deliberately blocked as a tool of warfare, whether local authorities are transparent enough that outside pressure can actually change their behavior, and whether the affected population has any real political voice capable of forcing a response. Every one of those questions is a Sen question, not simply an agricultural one, and it is exactly why food security experts today talk constantly about access and governance, not simply about total food production. Next time, we meet someone who took a much more skeptical view of exactly the kind of government action Sen hoped could deliver these freedoms. James Buchanan built an entire branch of economics around one uncomfortable question. What if politicians and bureaucrats are not selfless public servants at all, but simply ordinary self-interested people, doing what self-interested people always do once you hand them real power?
See you then.